Hi, I'm Heather Whitney. I am an assistant professor of radiology at the University of Chicago. And here I am a medical imaging physicist trained in medical physics. And I do research a lot in AI of medical imaging, a lot of quantitative questions in medical imaging overall.
So why did you choose to study physics?
I really liked how I got to learn how the world works, but not just that, it was kind of the mathematical thinking too. So that pairing of kind of watching and seeing what's around you and then learning about the frameworks that describe that and then kind of implementing them. That was really, really appealing. I did think about engineering first, as many people do. But for me, I learned that physics was more fundamental. And there was kind of a way of thinking as a physicist that I found really appealing.
So what additional steps beyond just signing up to study physics
Mm-hmm.
did you have to do in order to get to making your career choice?
No, that's a great question. I did a couple of RUs, so the summer undergraduate research experiences, and I first sought them out in biophysics, actually. So I was thinking, maybe the applications of physics to living things was more what I was interested in. And so I was really fortunate. I did 2 summers at Vanderbilt, actually in the same lab both times. And kind of two things happened at one time. I really loved my experience there, and I also learned that biophysics was not for me. And part of that was because, working with animals a lot, I did not find that appealing. But what I did find actually really appealing was the essentially the magnetic field measurements we were making. We were doing some really interesting studies of the changes of magnetic fields in the stomach, which is really wild to think about.
Yeah.
So I feel like medical physics and biophysics is full of these moments of like, wow, I did not know that was going on at all, right? And then you learn like, wow, I can measure that. Wow, I can predict how it's going to be useful for figuring out something. So that whole sequence was just really appealing. So I learned through the summer experiences that I did not want to do biophysics, but I did really want to kind of stay in the life sciences sense, so to speak. And then another key experience was just showing up to a department seminar where we had an alumni come and talk, and he talked about his job in medical physics. And I remember sitting in that seminar and he's showing these slides, and I think, that's it. That's everything is clicking for me. And I think for many people that go into medical physics, their experience is just like that. It's a crystalline moment where you go, that's it. And so I was really lucky that that's it moment happened in undergrad. For many people, it happens much later. And so I was grateful for that alumni coming to talk. But really, so it was summer research experiences, going to seminars, hearing people present, and thinking like, wow, that's the one for me.
How would you say that physics has been a win for your career?
Physics is a field that is highly adaptable in many, many ways. So it's both adaptable and it gives you this strong foundation. So for a long time in my career, I taught undergraduate physics as my focus. And something that I really became convinced of through that process was like thinking like a physicist is a certain way of engaging with and understanding the world. And so foundationally, that is really unique and can go so many places. Okay, so it was a win because when I look back, I had this experience of teaching students, and now I look back to what was happening when I was a student. Now I realize it. I was developing a really wonderful, unique foundational thinking about how to problem solve, how to assess what's important, to figure out how do I even like think about something in the first place. And so that thinking like a physicist sense making is a real win for many different paths. And I'm totally convinced about this. So, I've stayed in the lane of medical physics, but I actually, have had, for over a decade, I taught at a small liberal arts college in physics while doing research on the side. And I actually have made a career transition to where I'm now faculty at an R1 institution where I'm focusing on research. What has remained the same is my thinking like a physicist. And also too, the tools that we use for physics has undergone really substantial change in the past 25 years, right? We have, back in the day, we would do projects around kind of curve fitting essentially, right? And then now AI is part of our toolbox as physicists. And so there's a little bit of a paradigm shift when you think about training a model to data versus like a physical representation. But my brain was ready for that, actually, I would say, because I was a physicist. And Looking back, I am so happy actually that I chose to be a physics major because it really just has meant so much for possibilities.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is that physics is a way to hedge against
Yeah.
technological developments like AI, because you're not really taught to go study a specific thing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You're taught about how to go about studying.
How to think. Yeah, how to think, and you are ready to use whatever is available. And the magnitude of change that we've seen even just in 25 years, sometimes I think, wow, what will happen in the next 25 years? That's almost like too much to think about, right? But also too, like, not only could it be big change, but it could be, seismic change. But I think because I was a physicist, I was prepared to kind of be able to think differently about projects.
So this is a little awkward question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not asking about you specifically, but
Mm-hmm.
how much does a medical physicist make in the career?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I think you have to differ between clinical medical physics and industry medical physics or academic medical physics. I'll focus on clinical medical physics in part because that aspect of the field actually conducts salary surveys.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody can go and get kind of roundabout information about the level of compensation. I would also say too, when we talk about compensation for clinical medical physics, part of it reflects expertise, which is really highly specialized, but also a large level of responsibility. Especially on the therapy physics side, you're delivering radiation as a treatment, and there's a tremendous amount of responsibility, and then of course on the imaging side too.
People's lives are on the line.
People's lives are on the lines, accidents can happen, and so the level of expertise is valuable, and that when we speak of valuable, that ties to compensation. I would say at this point, it's not uncommon for a clinical medical physicist to start out in the mid 100,000s for salary, and certainly scales from there.
Okay.
So usually they do, before they become a clinical medical physicist too, they're doing what's called residency. And typically that compensation is, I would say, in the maybe 70,000 range right now. You want to refer to kind of full information.
Okay.
But that gives a sense of scale of what we're talking about. On the industry side, those salaries are scaled to kind of industrial questions. I'm less familiar with that. But again, well compensated because of the background and the value that brings. On the research side, those salaries are tied to typical university norms and would really differ between institutions.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm a research only person, and so I have a medical physics master's degree, and then I went on to do a PhD in physics because I really wanted to keep that foundational thinking, and I really wanted to focus on research. So here I run a lab, and what that means is I'm trying to accomplish research outcomes. I'm trying to find new ways of thinking or new ways of understanding, and what that means, kind of the outcomes of that, the deliverables or papers. So sometimes I'll start my day by working on a manuscript, trying to maybe tie it together or really kind of thinking through what we should be saying in it. Sometimes I'll be preparing to give a talk because part of my job is to also kind of share out what we're doing and go engage with others in the community. So sometimes I might start my day by preparing a talk. I have a lab with wonderful trainees, graduate students, a postdoc. I work with high school students too. So a lot of times I'm thinking through their projects. I'll give you an example. This morning, I was commuting in on the train, and we had some results yesterday that we were just doing a lot of sense making about. Actually, we were like, we're not really sure where these are going, what they mean. So on the train, I was crunching numbers, and then called the team in, and we all met right here and kind of thought through it. It was a great meeting. So sometimes I'm kind of coaching / advising / thinking along with my students. Mm-hmm. I do a lot of Zoom meetings because physics is very collaborative, and online platforms have really allowed us to be even more collaborative. So lots of Zoom meetings. So my day looks like a lot of different things, but it's all towards the goal of advancing understanding. Sometimes I'm even just out in the hallway. My clinical colleagues are here in this hallway with me. Sometimes I'm just hearing what they're thinking about, what they're interested in. We even form projects on the fly, all kinds of things like that.
Now, just out of curiosity, this isn't one of the questions, but do you have to get grants, or are you then independent because you're part of the hospital?
Oh, that's a great question. So my role is, part of this is like how UChicago is structured, right? I am in a largely clinical department that is affiliated, like is in the hospital, but I'm in this basic sciences role. And the way it's structured is that the university makes, a commitment to cover a certain part of my salary that reflects kind of my work within the institution. So that can be service on committees, teaching students, these kinds of things. And then there's an aspect where I am expected to bring in grant money as a way to support part of what I do. Here, it's not there's a goal to meet. It's not a scary situation at all. I would say, to many people looking at an academic career, when you hear about grants being supporting your salary, that can sound scary. But there is a lot of nuance to that. And I think overall, what this means is if I am achieving grant funding, it really is a reflection of my level of engagement with science in general. Money in science can often be symbolic, where it's practical. We need money to do things, right? And certainly I need my salary, but it also symbolizes kind of what your peers think about your science, what a funding group thinks about the potential for your science. It's very reflective of all of these things.
So if you're having success in the other areas, then you're going to have success in your grant.
Typically, it's tricky and there's ups and downs. And I think I saw a presentation one time where somebody who had been in the field for 40 years, he actually did plot out his funding amount over time. And it was, up and down, right? But a lot of high risk things in life are up and down. And so, but I also, through those funds, I support graduate students and postdocs. I would say a large part of my work is going after grant funding. But I would say actually to any physics major, the takeaway for you is that science is not just crunching numbers. It's thinking about what you do and writing about what you do. And of course, we always think about publications as writing. But grant writing is its own thing in which you actually do a lot of creative thinking. To sit down and say, this is what I think I should do. This is why it's important. This is the plan I'm going to make. This is what I'll do if that falls through. Writing that out accomplishes so much thinking. So I think grant writing is not just about getting the dollars, but also about the opportunity to think through things.
100% agree.
Yeah.
So do you have a funny story that you've had in your process that you'd like to share to the community? I don't know if that's putting you on the spot.
No, it's a good question.
Your story about the students in your office kind of working together this morning was really nice.
Yeah, it's just exactly what it should have been, right?
Like from a movie.
From a movie, it was very much like a movie. I think, I will say a funny story. I will maybe say two things. One is, and they're both about people in the end, which I would say too, for if you're thinking about physics is much more social and interactive in a really meaningful way than I ever anticipated as an undergrad. I really relish kind of these stories of people. So I just went to the American Association of Physicists in Medicine annual meeting and saw two people I had not seen in a long time. One was my master's thesis advisor. I hadn't seen him in about 20 years maybe, and then, or maybe 15, 20. And then also a college classmate of mine.
Wow.
Is also now serving on the American Association of Physicists in Medicine board. And we had not seen each other since college. And to know that we've done this kind of parallel path and then saw each other at the meeting was so lovely. It was just so great. And then I would also say, this vignette this morning of where, you're wrestling with an idea, sometimes you hear about, sometimes the vision of a professor can be that you're kind of like always got the knowledge and you're always passing it down. No, in that moment, we had real questions about the results we were seeing. And it was really this kind of collaborative effort where the graduate student, the high school student, we're all kind of double checking each other, sense making. Everybody was doing their part to contribute. And we figured it out, made a plan to move forward. I feel like that actually really does illustrate the best parts of my job.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. So what's one thing you wish you knew when you were in college?
I have to say I'm glad I learned about medical physics sooner rather than later, right? So a lot of people get to grad school or even into their full career and then they learn about medical physics and they're like, oh my gosh, I wish. So I want to say first, there is a group of people that wishes they knew about medical physics in particular earlier. And I feel really fortunate that I learned about it earlier. But then what I wish I knew is, actually, I wish I had known the fluidity between math and physics. Sometimes you think about your math classes, if you're crunching through a certain number of things, you think, well, okay, sure, I'm doing this physics idea through linear algebra. Like, am I good enough to transfer that over? But what I wish I had known is that these things are actually much more integrated than I realized. And I think I would have approached math differently if I had seen it kind of as more cohesive with physics. Now, certain people will tell you very different results. My husband is a theoretical physicist. He never had that separation. For him, I would say he's probably too integrated. He might say that, the math drives the physics, and I have real questions about that. But, I'm an applications, very practical-minded physicist, and perhaps I wish I had known earlier how one can think more fluidly about math and physics. Yeah.
So what advice would you give a student who is just starting out?
Do a summer experience.
Like a research experience?
A research experience. And I think it can even be shadowing too, right? So there are many physicists who are engaged in industry, or like our clinical medical physicists, right? To shadow a physicist in some way and or to do research, I think is so key, because you do get a sense of just how much do you like something. When I was doing the biophysics undergraduate research, I really understood I like the people, but I do not enjoy some of the things we're doing. I like the device, right? That taught me a lot. It is really cool. There's magnetic fields in your stomach, right? It's so cool. And there's these squids, right? That can measure these really, really small magnetic fields. I mean, that's just like, it's when you do a summer research experience or shadowing, it's not all or nothing. It's not like you're deciding I'm in or I'm out, but you learn more aspects of things, and you can kind of figure out, like, what do you like? What don't you like? What are other things you're learning about? Sometimes you learn even about the next step through a summer experience. So I would say that would be my biggest piece of advice to someone.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Something I love about SPS,
Society of Physics
Society
Students.
of Physics Students, that I think is important for anybody considering physics, is SPS has a mantra of physics is better because you're in it. And what that really means is, like, if you are interested in physics, you belong. You just do. And you might not feel it all the time, and you might second guess your abilities. It's so easy to kind of look at others around you and think, oh, I don't do things that way, or I don't look that way. Like, do I really belong here? But one thing that's really nice about physics is the further you go in it, the more you find your people. And so you actually might feel like a fish out of water for a lot of reasons at first. But then as you keep going and you have your experiences, you find a sense of self, and you find the people that really do enjoy the things that you do too. But I would say, when you're in that uncertain feeling, like, be confident, because, like, the field is actually better because you are interested in it. I really believe that strongly. And we will benefit from people who come and learn and contribute. So it's really important to know.